ordained minister. I have the privilege of announcing our a biography of our guest speaker today, Reverend Karen Linsley. She is an ordained minister with the Centers for Spiritual Living. She serves through the Focus Ministry titled Fearlessly Feral Living, with the production of a podcast of the same name, available wherever you listen to podcasts. She is also a published author with her third book, Almost Ready. Is it still almost? Almost. It's coming. Let us know. She has spoken at numerous Unity and Centers for Spiritual Living venues. She believes we were put on earth to be happy and powerful and express ourselves as the unique manifestations of spirit that we are. She lives in rural northern Nevada with her 2 dogs, 2 cats, and 2 horses, and enjoys driving her sports car, riding her horse, going to the range, gardening, cooking, and attending potlucks. Who doesn't? Her message today is, "And we are still together." Thank you, Karen. We look forward to it.
Thank you very much. Wasn't that music awesome this morning? Thank you, thank you, thank you. One voice. And I'm very grateful to be here today. Hi, everybody. So I want to begin with a story. And this is one of those once upon a time stories. Once upon a time, there was a woman. This woman wanted a closer connection with a God of her understanding. She didn't just want this connection. She needed this connection. She needed it in a way that she knew that if she didn't have this connection, life as she knew it was going to come to an end. It was a need that deep. And so she searched and she researched and she talked to other people about how they got connected with a God of their understanding. And she read books and she did all kinds of stuff. She prayed and meditated and she embarked on this journey of searching. And she was still missing out on that connection. But she persevered. And one day, she had one of those aha moments, you know, the kind where it went, oh my goodness, light bulb moment, aha, went off. And she realized that she had the connection all along. She was just blocking it. And she realized that she was blocking it because she was refusing to be vulnerable to this connection. She had a lot of fear. And she didn't want this connection because for some reason, being vulnerable for her at that time, well, that just wasn't going to work very well. Because, see, she didn't have an understanding of the spiritual power of vulnerability. So she played with it because she wanted that connection. She needed that connection. And she was willing to do anything, to be anything, to experience that connection. And so she started playing around with vulnerability. And she became vulnerable spiritually. And today she is connected with that sunlight of the Spirit. Today she is vulnerable. And because she is vulnerable, she experiences the power and the peace and the joy that is God. And I love it in your mission statement and in a lot of your music and in everything you say and do around here. You say, we are the expression of God. I just love that because that's what I'm speaking to here. And that woman that I just told you this story about, that was me about 33 years ago. So I've been experiencing the power of vulnerability for a really long time. So when this topic came up, I thought, well, okay, let's check it out again and go take another dive into it. Because when you I'll speak in the first person. Because I don't know if this is true for you or not, when I have these attributes of spirit, such as vulnerability, at times I don't even think about them. They're in my consciousness. They're the way that I live. They're a lifestyle for me, but I don't always actively think about them. So in preparing this talk, I had to go back into actively thinking about vulnerability. And vulnerability and unconditional love and acceptance and seeing God in everyone allows us to still be together in relationship. Vulnerability and unconditional love and acceptance and seeing God in everyone is what allows community like this to grow. Because when someone walks through the door and they're greeted with someone who sees the God in them, they feel that. And when someone walks through the door and they're greeted with someone who sees the God in them, the person who's doing the greeting feels that. And then we just keep creating this ever bigger, beautiful God circle, which is really kind of cool. Really kind of cool. And being vulnerable is a spiritual attribute. And I believe it's the key to feeling okay in the world. Because what we teach, that oneness, that stuff that says, I am the expression of God, we repeat it, we teach it, we go over it in classes, we do this deal, and yet, how can we feel as if we're the expression of God if we're not vulnerable to God? It's that vulnerability that allows us to feel that oneness. And when we feel and experience that oneness, then we can celebrate the unity and the diversity and our divine connection with all that is and with everyone in the world, even those we disagree with. Now you may be thinking to yourself, I am not going to be vulnerable, not in this day and age. It's not safe out there in the world. But again, what I'm speaking to here this morning is not that kind of vulnerability. I'm speaking to an inner vulnerability. The kind of vulnerability I'm speaking to this morning is not the kind of vulnerability that says, oh, I can leave my doors unlocked because God will protect me. I used to know someone like that. They left their doors unlocked all the time. And sure enough, they were vulnerable. This kind of vulnerability is not about allowing people to take advantage of us. This kind of vulnerability is not about going through the world with absolutely no boundaries whatsoever. The kind of vulnerability that I'm speaking to is the kind of vulnerability that allows us to set healthy boundaries, that allows us to take responsibility for ourselves, that allows us to show up in the world with a peace and a power that knows. Vulnerability is an inner state of being that allows us to completely embody oneness. When we know this vulnerability and we embody it, and we acknowledge our divine selves without hesitation or doubt, then we can feel that spiritual vulnerability. We can feel that oneness. And we can feel that oneness without the childhood conditioning that says that God's only something outside of us. How many of us have said, wait a minute, God can't be something inside of me. I can't be vulnerable to that. That's not what I was taught growing up. It's sacrilegious to believe that. I can't believe that. And that's okay. But vulnerability allows us to know and feel that God that's within us on so much deeper levels, and it allows us to actually be and show up as oneness in the world. Now, You guys say we are the divine expression. I am the divine expression. If we are not vulnerable, we can't really know our true selves. And if we can't know our true selves, we can't know the divinity within us. It's all interrelated. It's all wrapped up into one nice little ball of peace and joy and good, yummy stuff. If we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, then we allow ourselves to know our true selves. We allow ourselves to know, yes, indeed, I am the expression of a loving God. We can know that we're just little godlings running around in human form. We know that we're the goodness and the joy and the power and the peace and the love that is God. We get all that from cultivating an attribute of vulnerability within ourselves. We open up to this sunlight of the Spirit. You know, when we meditate, there's a lot of folks that teach meditation that advocate an open posture when you're meditating, kind of like an open posture when you're doing yoga, which is kind of a form of meditation too. And we advocate this open posture. When we do that, that's like a physical, metaphorical representation of the opening up of the inside of ourselves, to allow that God to allow ourselves to feel that God that's within us all the time, 24/7. This is a different kind of perspective. You know, this inner vulnerability that I'm speaking to, it's a different kind of a perspective than that outer vulnerability. You know, the outer vulnerability that says, oh, I can leave my doors unlocked because God will protect me. I'm not speaking to that today. I'm speaking to an inner vulnerability that says, I am one with Spirit and I am open to that one. And because I'm open to that one, I am in touch with that divine intuition that is within me, and I know and I feel. And I get it. And I walk through the world knowing it's time to go this way. It's time to do that. It's time to stop doing this. I walk through the world knowing I need to say yes to this and no to that. This kind of vulnerability that comes from within us, that deep, deep space that's within us, allows us to live so much freer than we would otherwise live, because we are in touch with our true selves. We are in touch with that divinity within us. And when we have that connection with the divinity within us, then we begin to experience the outer power of vulnerability. Then we can know without a doubt that we are safe in this world, no matter what, no matter where we go, no matter what we do. That kind of stuff all comes from within us. With that kind of vulnerability, we move through the world living in our power. We just do. I have an example for you, and I didn't put this in my notes, but it's what's coming up. So, men, I don't know if you're taught this or not, but women are taught it. We're taught it from a very early age. We're taught when we walk in the street to walk with purpose, to always be aware of our surroundings, to not slouch, to pay attention, to stand in our power. Because if we walk all slumped over and not paying attention with tiny little mincing steps, that makes us prey to the predators. But if we stand in our power and we walk in our power, and we walk with good, firm, solid steps, and we pay attention and we move through the world with that power, then most predators are going to leave us alone because they're anticipating a fight. The inner kind of vulnerability allows us to be and walk in that kind of power without even thinking about it. It allows us to know our own strength to such an extent that we just live it, and we are evidence of it, and we manifest that power wherever we go and whatever we do. It's a pretty wonderful way to live, honestly. This is why I nurtured this vulnerability so early on in my life, because I didn't want to be the person who was forever protecting herself from the outside world. I knew there was something wrong with that picture. And today, I don't need protection from the outside world. I am extraordinarily vulnerable, but I am also very, very powerful because of that vulnerability. And I have this built-in protection by virtue of my connection with that divinity within me that is just there. It's just a wonderful way to be. When we are living this kind of vulnerability, we can set good, healthy boundaries with people that we're in relationship. We can set good, healthy boundaries with what's going on in the outside world today. We can take care of ourselves by doing that. This is good self-care, by the way, this stuff. Because self-care isn't about massages and manicures. It's about being able to know our truth and our power from that deep place of oneness within us that allows us to be vulnerable. And then set these boundaries and move out into the world and know our worth and know our connection and feel that. When we are vulnerable and we show up in the world confident and full of power, we have things like good communication skills. So because we're feeling safe in the world, we don't react so much to what's going on. We respond. And when we respond in a thoughtful way, then we can talk well with people. We can communicate well with people. We can speak in I sentences. We can ask questions that are respectful. We can show up in the world genuinely curious about others. And we can listen for the answers when they ask the questions. I've been working on this a lot lately. I don't know that I'm entirely there yet, but I'm working on it. When we're vulnerable, we can state our truth and know it because we feel it. When we're vulnerable, because we are getting power from that vulnerability from inside of us, we can look out at the world and move about in the world without fear. It doesn't mean we can't express concern. It means that we can exercise our responsibility. We have personal responsibility to ourselves to take care of ourselves. We have a responsibility as citizens to show up in the world and participate in whatever it is we feel like we need to participate in. What I'm advocating today is that vulnerability through oneness allows us to move through life peacefully and successfully. Now, there's one other benefit to vulnerability. I call it a side benefit. And this has to do with the law of attraction. So, the first biggie, the big part of vulnerability is about oneness and being able to feel fully and completely connected with the God of our understanding so that we can use the strength and the power that comes through being vulnerable to that one and move out into the world that way. And here's the side benefit. When we do that, when we experience that oneness and we feel that oneness and we live that oneness, we attract other people who think and see and act and be the same as us. Because the law of attraction tells us we don't attract what we think about, we attract what we be. So if we're moving through the world in our vulnerability, feeling powerful and peaceful and happy, because we are fully and completely connected with the one, guess what? We're going to attract other people that are experiencing and doing and being the same thing. And isn't that cool? I think that's why we show up to places like this, so that we can encounter people like us. I don't know about you guys, but it's wonderful to come to a place like this and know that I'm here because something about you attracted me here. And know that because something about you attracted me here, there's a connection between us. I'm feeling that oneness. I'm feeling that thing that's there. That's a pretty wonderful thing for me to contemplate. You know, I come into these communities and I feel it. And it's a joyous, wonderful feeling. When I go into the other communities that I serve, I feel it. I even feel it on my podcast, which is basically me talking into a microphone, and the audience is scattered all over the world, and I never see them or hear them. But I know they're there. And because I feel that oneness, I'm speaking directly to them, which is a pretty wonderful thing. It's kind of cool the way that happens. When we are vulnerable, we can accept everything and everyone just the way they are. Here's another little piece of vulnerability. And I forgot to look at what time it was when I started, and I have no idea how much time I have left. Sorry, guys, if I go over. Not really. I'm not sorry. I'm going to continue talking. So a while back, I wasn't feeling so vulnerable. I had my walls up big time. I was feeling miserable, depressed, angry, sad. You know, all those feelings that we get to feel sometimes. And I allowed those feelings for a little while because that's what I'm taught to do, not to fight them, but allow them. But there came a point in time when I was tired of it. And I said, enough is enough. And so I went and I started doing all my spiritual tools to get out of this feeling and back into a feeling of positivity and optimism instead of pessimism and self-pity and victimhood and woe is me. And I was in the backyard eating worms and it was just miserable. So I started doing all the tools I know to do. You know, I was reading and I was journaling and I was meditating and I was doing affirmative prayer and I was talking with my prayer partners and having them do affirmative prayers for me, and I was doing all this stuff, and guess what? It wasn't working. I was still depressed. I was still sad. I was still angry. I was still puzzled. I still felt betrayed. And so I did something really, really desperate. I reached out to a mentor. I went, oh my God, it's time. Karen, you have to pick up the phone and reach out. So I reached out. I reached out to a man who's another Center for Spiritual Living minister, who's been a minister much longer than me. And every time I see this man, he's got this light shining about him. And I've never heard him say anything negative or bad about anyone or anything. And so I reached out to him and I poured out my tale of woe to him in great detail. And he listened to that for a few minutes, and then he said, Karen, love it all. And I sputtered and stammered and, what? What? He said, love it all. And I sputtered a bit more, and I said, but what if? And he said, love it all. And I said, yeah, but. And he said, love it all. And I'm like, I'm starting to hear him by this point, love it all. And then he explained that by loving it all, I was ceasing to fight all of those feelings that I was fighting. All the pessimism, all the depression, all the sadness, all the feelings of betrayal, all of the icky stuff that was going on in me. And then when we cease fighting something, guess what? It stops fighting back. And it just kind of gently went away, all those things. And then he said, Karen, you need to love all that outside stuff too. So the day after we spoke, I had to drive down to Bakersfield because I'm serving as interim minister down there. And so I decided to do Love It All on my trip. I loved the journey. Well, I love the journey anyway, but I loved the gas station folks. I loved the dirty restrooms. I loved the rest areas. I loved the soda machine in the one rest stop that didn't work. I loved all the different types of people that I meet on my journey. I loved it all. And you know what happened? By the time I got to Bakersfield, I was feeling the love. I was feeling optimistic. I was feeling joyful. I was feeling this absolutely beautiful sense of oneness with the world again. I was back. My old self was back. I couldn't believe it. So loving it all is really kind of a form of vulnerability. I had to prove him right. I had to test his theory about loving it all, and I did, and it worked. So all of those feelings, moving through and fighting them doesn't work. But when we love it all, something happens, and they go, okay, I've got nothing left to fight with around here. I'm going to release. Now imagine, if you will, we did the same thing in our relationships with people. If we stopped fighting who and what they were, if we just loved them anyway, if we just loved it all, if we stopped trying to help them, if we stopped trying to make them see reason, if we stopped trying to convince them of the error of their ways, just imagine. If we stop doing that, perhaps we might begin to see that we're really not so different after all, that we've got common goals and common ground. I used to have another mentor when I was being not very accepting and loving of others. I wasn't loving at all. And she said, Karen, what you're doing is like trying to teach a pig to fly. It doesn't work, and it just pisses off the pig. That kind of stuff sticks with me. We get to love it all. And in this way, it just gently releases. It just gently releases. So today, on this journey to connection and oneness and vulnerability, we get to love it all. And when we love it all, and we begin to feel that connection with ourselves, and we begin to see the God in ourselves and the divinity in ourselves, and then we can see the God in everybody else. And then all of a sudden, almost automatically, we're practicing unconditional love for everyone. So yeah, that's my take on vulnerability, you guys. We get to start within with that. And so I thank you for listening today. And I'm going to end rather with a nice, good old-fashioned affirmative prayer that begins, of course, with oneness, recognizing that, yes, indeed, God is truly everywhere present, living and moving and breathing in and as and through me, knowing that I am the expression of God, knowing that everyone around me is the expression of God, and knowing and feeling that I am, through this expression, loving it all, feeling the peace and the power and the presence of this God, knowing that it is running through me, allowing me to love it all, accept it all, be in joy and communion with it all, because it is all beautiful and it is all good and very good. And so my words are now complete, and I release them into that law that always says yes, and I anchor, and so it is. Thank you very much.